I've spent a couple of hours in the park reading The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. It's such a beautiful day out. The birds are singing, and it's just amazing to read this book in nature. It's a book about a young woman who is starting her career in New York in a sultry summer. And it's a bit of a depressing book. I can definitely see the signs of depression starting already, even though I'm just like a third way through. But I think it's gonna get even more sad as the book goes forward, so I'm a bit scared about that. So far I'm enjoying the book. I think I'm gonna spend a couple more hours reading here and then I'll head home and yeah, do more reading and maybe grabbing a cold drink. Days ago was full-on summer, super hot, and now it's raining outside. I was looking forward to having a nice little springy weekend, going to the farmer's market and whatnot, but it looks like that's not gonna happen anymore. And instead I'm going to have a cozy weekend in where I'm gonna admire the rain and I'm gonna do lots of reading. I started reading one of the classics that was on my year's TBR. I really wanted to get to this classic this year, and that's The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This is one of those classics that you hear everyone love and you just need to read it to see what it's about. We're following Esther. She is a young graduate and she gets her first job in New York at a fashion magazine. So it's this really big deal. She's always been a star student. I don't know if anybody else has this experience with reading this book, but I'm finding the tone to be very monotone. And I think this is kind of wanted from Sylvia Plath, obviously, because the book itself deals a lot with mental health and depression, and so I think this is kind of something that she wanted for the book to be so monotone and so kind of grayish, but it does take away from my ability to enjoy the story. I do find that in some parts it's still, the description of the scenery is really beautiful, so I like those parts a lot. She describes going to a sanatorium in the mountains where there's a ski resort, so I really like those descriptions, or the descriptions of the sultry summer in New York. Those are really nice too, but aside from those, I have a hard time getting into the story, and I don't know, just kind of feeling connected to the characters and to the story itself for some reason. So I'm not loving it so far. I'm halfway through it. I think the story will progress and get more and more intense from here. So far we just follow Esther living her life in New York and going about her days. There's definitely feelings of alienation, of loneliness. She also goes back in time and thinks a little bit about her past relationships, and there's definitely feelings of maybe not anxiety, but definitely solitude, feeling let down by people. So I could already see all these negative feelings potentially culminating into something bigger towards the end of the book. But yeah, so far the book feels very bleak to me. So I think for the rest of the night I'm going to enjoy the rain, curl up on my sofa and enjoy quite a bit more of this book. So yeah. It's been raining all week. The temperature is definitely not aligning with my vision for a spring reading experience. So we're gonna bake some cookies to mitigate a little bit my pain right now, my struggle to enjoy spring. I did new nails yesterday. I am so proud of them. It took me forever, but I don't know if this is focusing on, but if not, I'll insert some video. I've been reading Emily's Encyclopaedia of Faeries, and so these are kind of fairy, dark forest type inspired nails. I don't love the book, but I do think It has good inspiration for nails and art. I think that the imagery in the book is really nice and the descriptions of nature, but I find the book a bit boring. It's a bit disappointing because I really wanted to love this book. So many people talked about it, and it's actually a book that I kind of was saving up for myself. You know, those books that you have such high expectations for that you just don't want to read because you know it's going to be good and you just want to keep postponing it as much as possible so that you don't just get to enjoy it once and then it's over. But I'm actually excited to finish it because I don't really like the book. But at least I have cute nails to go with the book that I'm reading. Okay, let's bake cookies. Days later and the temperature is the exact same. It's gray, it's dreary. Spring vibes from the beginning of the video have completely left the chat. This is what happens when you live in Canada. I have a little bit of a book update. I finished The Bell Jar today by Sylvia Plath. I'm still trying to figure out a little bit how I feel about this book. This is not gonna be a new favorite classic for me, for sure. I did not really enjoy the book. I think the monotone and grayish tone of this book really took away from my ability to enjoy it, but I do think there's a couple things here that are nicely developed and should be talked about. What I really enjoyed in this book is the discussion about what depression looks like, both from the perspective of how depression is described, but also from the perspective of the author really leaving traces throughout the whole narrative of how depression comes to be and what depression looks like before even the person is aware that they're depressed. And I think depression here is exemplified really as a set of events, a set of traumas, a set of experiences, negative experiences that just eventually end up culminating into something much bigger that you haven't anticipated. And I think that's a really helpful way to look at it, because at the beginning of the story we have Esther, as I explained, having some lonely experiences, having some negative romantic and also friendship-like experiences. And so not one single one of those is enough, I guess, to trigger depression, but all of them together culminate into a life that seems to be void of meaning, a life that is lonely, that doesn't feel like there's any positivity left. I also really enjoyed, obviously, the metaphor of the bell jar. If you haven't read the book, I don't want to spoil it too much for you, but essentially towards the end of the book we figure out kind of why the book is titled The Bell Jar. I think that's a beautiful metaphor and a beautiful way to put it. I really enjoyed the descriptions when that was brought in. Without going into specifics of how this book ends, I did think the ending was really well done. It's an ending that aligns, I think, with how mental issues are in general. They're not things that could be concrete. They're not things that could have the definitive answers oftentimes or definitive solutions. I think it spoke a lot to the challenges of dealing with mental health. Some other themes that I enjoyed in this book were the disconnect between the patient herself, like Esther, and the disconnect between her needs and her expectations from the medical staff and what she was receiving in terms of medical care that the medical staff was seeing as appropriate. And I think obviously a lot of these discussions about ethical applications of medicine have changed quite a bit. I think in contemporary times, we've made a lot of improvement in that area, but in the 1960s when this book was written, there's still a lot of controversial applications of certain treatments. In some moments of this book, I had the impression, and maybe this was just me, but I had the impression that we're dealing with a little bit of an unreliable narrator. Obviously, Esther being mentally ill, you don't really know sometimes if you should trust her perceptions of the world or if she just misaligns or misinterprets certain actions and behaviors from people. She would always see herself in a negative light, and everyone who interacted with her also in a negative light. And so it was difficult to tell whether the things she was hinting at actually happened or it was just a little bit in her mind. I felt that oftentimes she would project her negativity onto specific situations or specific people, even when the objective descriptions of those people, the way they would act, or the situation itself would not really warrant such a perception. So it was interesting to read this book from that perspective too, of really asking yourself as a reader of whether you could trust the narrator and everything that they perceive to be as reality and as something that has actually happened. Overall, I think this was an interesting read. It's not a book that I would recommend to people. It's definitely a book that will put you in a little bit of a gloomy state for sure. And so I would only pick it up if you are very mentally stable and you can take on a little bit of more negativity in your life. Other than that, I was a little bit let down. I expected to really love this book. I thought I'm gonna give it a 5-star, and it's just not one of those books for me that really spoke to me. I could relate to a lot of the things that Esther went through, and so it was interesting that despite that fact, I still didn't really connect to the story and I didn't really connect to Esther herself. But I'm really glad that I read it because it was on my TBR for a very long time. I'm also making my way through Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia Faeries. I'm almost done with the book. I'm like 85% through it. I'm not going to talk at length about that one because I just don't really like it. I find it boring. I would consider it under the category of probably cozy fantasy, where the stakes are not that high. And yeah, I just don't really like it. I'm really struggling to make my way through it, and I think I'll just try to finish it in the next couple of days. And I think I'm going to end off this springy wannabe spring vlog. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.